That doesn't sound quite right, but can you hear that? Are you picking that up?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay. Well, that's our music. See, that's what happens when we take a week off from the show.
That's right.
Everything goes berserk.
Slackers.
Yeah. Let this finish out. We can fix this in editing. I think that'll be well, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just leave it this way. So it's more interesting. How are you, Danny McMahon?
Good, Joe Gasper. How are you?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, you were sick last week. We missed a week. I missed you.
I missed you as well.
We had so much to talk about.
I know we have a lot to catch up on. I did get sick. I thought it was COVID. I woke up one day with a horrible sore throat and just feeling miserable. Coughing, all that jazz, and then took 2 tests back-to-back days and both negative, and I didn't have any fever.
Except the cycling fever.
That's right. Right. And anyway, but I felt pretty horrible. I'm not almost 100% back. I have a lingering cough. But yeah, it was I took a couple of days off work. Like I hadn't been, I don't, knock on wood, I don't get sick a lot, and I hadn't had a cold in years, and it was weird to get the summer cold. Yeah,
you don't strike me as you don't strike me as a sickly guy. I mean,
that's good.
You come from good stock, like your old man lasted almost 1,000 years, right? And
that's right.
Your mom's still kicking, yeah. And I mean, it's like, yeah, and you're an Irish lad, a South Side guy. I mean, almost you could have been in the construction business.
That's right.
Very close to being. So I almost consider you a contractor of sorts. I
could have been framing houses and plumbing and digging ditches
if you wanted to. Yeah. If you wanted to, I mean, you're hardy stock.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, most of my a lot of my family went into the trades, different kinds. But no, it's funny. I will note I did have a little cough there mid sentence when you were talking, which I thought was funny. But no, mostly good. But yeah, thanks. I just was really I was just laying up in bed for like 2 days and slowly started to come back. And anyway, so it was what it was. But this, selfishly, is probably like a lot of road cyclists, whatever. I was just bummed I didn't really get to ride for like a week. I eventually did get out for some very chill rides, which was nice. But yeah, I was just like eager to get out because the weather was decent, and I was just like, ugh. But anyway, I'm over the sickness for the most part and back at it. And how have you been?
Good, man. Good. Busy. It was week leading. 10 days leading into the holiday. Gets pretty busy around the shop, just people clamoring for their bicycles, and wanting everything now, trying to turn stuff around quickly for good customers, taking advantage of it. It's the summertime, you got to make hay, so it was good. I mean, good, but busy, really busy. So, it's expected at this time of the year, so it better be busy. But I also, I realize why I miss out on the Tour de France and all the stuff that's going on, at this time of the year, because we're always busy at the bike shop. This time of the year we're usually really kicking, and this year I've made a point of just kind of trying to slow down a little bit, just trying to take a breath and get a better, usually by the time you get into this time of the year, in other years, you don't have time to think, and you just get swallowed up by the season. You got no choice. And then before you know it, it's September, it's August, September, and you try to catch some of these rides, you try to watch the tour. But some years it just goes by and you don't, there's nothing there. You don't have time to to digest any of it. So this year I'm trying to enjoy like a little bit of tour. I'm trying, doing some riding, and try to balance a little bit of what's happening at the bike shop and what and just try to experience a little bit of what other like people that ride bikes. It's like what because I have to understand it a little bit. I have to,
Sure.
I try to understand. I'm trying to understand our customers and see where they're riding and see what they're doing. It really has been a little bit of research too, to see what people are doing out there. All these new riders, like what is it that they're, what is it that they're, what is it that they're doing? Where are they riding? What do these roads look like these days? What is all the stuff that they're talking about? Like it's been a while since I've ridden in the middle of the day on a Tuesday, for example.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing, like how many people are out there on a Thursday evening ride. I ran into these groups of people, and a lot of customers, a lot of my shop customers, and to see them out there on their bikes and these things that I only I have brief interactions with them at the shops, but I never see them on their bikes and out there riding. And it's just it's a really interesting. It's an interesting sight. And to see them all together, and it's taking pictures. I'm like a celebrity, Danny. Like at the end, I was holding court at the end of the bike path. Just people hey, you're the guy from the bike shop, and it's like
wow.
So it's but that's just been it's been interesting. I mean, that's why I went out to kind of see what was going on, and it's been just a reminder. I mean, I guess I know that all these people are out there riding bikes and stuff, but when you see it, it's different. It's like seeing your teacher at the supermarket.
Yes.
So like, oh my God, you're a real person out here. And
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Good to hear that you're getting out a little bit and seeing some of the folks in real life out on the roads. That's I can imagine that's important. It's speaks to your kind of commitment and getting to know your customers, and it helps your business. It'll strengthen your relationships, and I think it goes a long way. That's it's good karma and stuff.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's been
nice.
It's been 2 or 3 years really since we used to do a lot of events. So we'd go and do like a local century, and just help out at some charity events. Doing some SAG work. But obviously, the last couple of years, a lot of that stuff has been canceled, and so it's just trying to get back into that rhythm and routine, and starting be a part of that again, and a lot of new faces, obviously, a lot of new people out there riding. So that's interesting. I just got back from a ride right now.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah, I just went out.
Good for you, sir.
I just went out and knocked out 40K in 95-degree weather. So.
Whoa, very good for you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I fixed. I saw a guy walking with his bike, and I did the old you okay? And I was actually hoping to hear yes, I'm okay, but he's like no, I'm not. I was like, oh man, I got a podcast to do. I gotta say, I gotta get this right in. I was really, really hoping to get the old wave by, like, no, I'm good. And this guy, he's like, no, I need help. so I actually I stopped and I fixed his flat for him, because it was just gonna and as opposed to letting him use my pump and my equipment, I just pulled the wheel off his bike. I said, I gotta go. I'm just gonna fix this for you. You can get on your way. And he was very appreciative, and I went on with the ride.
Well, good for you, man. That's good. But I totally understand that too. I usually do a shout out, like, hey, you okay? Or is everything all right? And 99% of the time people are like, yeah, I'm fine. Thanks.
Yep.
And but every once in a while someone's like, and you just know they need some help.
Yeah, and it was just bad timing, because usually I didn't care. I don't have anywhere to go. I'm just out on a ride. I'm more than happy to help. And it turned out that he was familiar with me at the bike shop. He'd stopped at the bike shop before and recognized me. So, that's a good thing. And then he invited me for a beer, but I couldn't I couldn't. He's like, I'm going to be at the brewery, because there's a brewery at the end of the path,
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, I have very important things to do, and
That's right.
so
That sounds like could be a Larry David situation where, you know, you want to help people and you kind of ask them as a courtesy, but
hmm
you're really planning and hoping they say no because you got like a commitment.
yeah, yeah.
I could see that being like in a Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm episode.
It could very easily have turned into something like that, but it all worked. It all worked out. It all worked. I actually,
Were you actually keep going? Actually, I can't help.
yeah,
Right?
yes. I don't have that size tube. Sorry. It all went through my head too as I was pulling up to him. I was thinking, oh man, I'm like,
Oh my God.
and I kept getting close as I got close to him, and I realized I'm like, oh, road bike. He's got the same tube. I got the pump. I'm like, oh, I got no excuse here. I've got to help him out. So, but it was cool. It was cool. I'm like I said, I'm happy, and
Joe,
I
are
would
you
have.
still rocking the frame pump?
I am. I am. I have.
Nice.
It's not a full-on frame pump. It's a kind of a mini.
Okay.
It sits beside um my water bottle cage. It's one of
Yep.
those.
Gotcha.
And so it's kind of a mini frame pump, made by Leezine. I find that those are very
Yep.
good.
Yep.
But yeah, I still do the pump. I've never converted to the CO2 thing. You know,
Right. Right.
although
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I said, although the cartridges make me a lot of, they're a good money maker at the shop, but I've just
Mm.
never, no, I've never done them.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I was going to say, I don't know if you're aware, but there's kind of like we talked about acoustic bikes,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like what the kids are saying these days for mechanical. But there's kind of this like thing on like Instagram, I've seen it, where it's like, there's this, I mean, it's not new. We've seen variations on this in cycling and also in the real world beyond, but there's this power of nostalgia. And for example, there's this kind of like fetish with like the early Cannondale frames, not the early ones, the big thick oversized tubes, but like when the tubes were still kind of thicker, like the mid. I guess I'm thinking like the mid '90s. What am I thinking? Like the cab frames.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like some of those. Like I think that's the era I'm looking at. But like maybe they have STI, but like definitely rim brakes, that sort of thing. There's kind of like this real like fetish for those frames, and I see people on Instagram like rebuilding these bikes
Mm-hmm.
and making them really cool. But like part of that is I've seen a lot of people like, I don't know, really rocking like frame pumps, like old
Yeah.
school frame pumps, which work on those bikes. They don't really work on a lot of modern bikes,
Mm-mm.
depending on the frame pump. But I still have the Zeffel pump, Joe,
Oh,
that I had back in the day when we rode. I still have it. It
yeah.
still works.
Yeah, I still got one. I still have one. It has a dent in it from when someone tried to. I don't know. Were you riding with me when I went?
I was. We
right.
talked about this.
Oh yeah.
You were getting ready to do battle.
Oh man, that thing those things were great when with aggressive
yeah.
drivers, man, because you had it was like you had a weapon, you had something to defend yourself with.
And if they didn't know what it was, it could look like a lead pipe.
Oh yeah, yeah. The thing would go flying out. It looked like a nunchuck or something. Just like boom. Because
and they just think like you're this madman and like lycra.
Yeah, it was an unusual sight going down Pulaski or Cicero Avenue. I mean, we were odd. It was an odd scene on the south side of Chicago to see that. So
Adam Meyerson, who you may know, Adam Meyerson, someone I'm friends with.
He won. He won one of our Soldier Field cycling races.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. I'm not surprised. He's a great crit rider.
Yep.
That was his bread and butter for decades. But I mentioned him just because he's definitely team frame pump. And so if you look at his Instagram, you'll see he's always got a frame pump on his bike. Huh. And he's currently sponsored by Bianchi. So he's a brand new full carbon aero race bike, Bianchi, but he's managed to get the frame pump on that frame. But I tried it on like some of my more modern bikes, and it just doesn't stay in. I would have to like strap the damn thing down like 3 times, and I actually tried it, and it was such a hassle. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this. So I do admit to using CO2s, although I haven't really had to actually use them, knock on wood.
Mm-hmm.
But that'll actually lead to another news item I was going to mention. But that's cool. You helped that guy, and it's good for karma, and maybe you get a rain check on the beer.
Yeah, yeah, I'll see. You know, it's yeah, it would have actually it would have felt really bad had I just blown that dude off. Like I can't,
It would have
you
been
know.
it would have been great if you just were whizzing by at like 20 miles, like, "Hey, you okay?" And then
Yeah,
he says, "No," and then you pretend you didn't hear him. You
yeah,
keep
like
going.
you know, yeah, no, you know,
And
I just yeah, no,
and then
that's never a good thing.
and then the Curb enthusiasm theme song starts,
Mm-hmm.
and then he comes into your shop one day. Hey, man, you rode by me and
Yeah,
said, "Are you
he,
okay? You didn't stop. What's up?"
yeah, you know, I think if it was in Curb, you know, he would look up and then see the bike, right? He'd recognize the bike, and then he'd put two and two
Yes,
together, right? And then like look at my
yes,
ponytail, right? And he'd be like,
yes.
wait, that's the dude. That's the
They would
dude.
like zero into his face, and his
Yeah.
eyebrows
Uh-huh.
would go up. And
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd be in
oh my
huge
god,
trouble. Yeah.
so funny. So I was just gonna mention, Joe, I do have a news item. I decided that I was fed up with tubeless, so
Mm-hmm.
I've gone back to inner tubes, man, clinchers.
You know, Danny, I gotta say, I knew that. I know that you know why I know that information, Danny? Because you tweeted it
Um,
out.
I tweeted it
Because
out. Of course I did.
you tweeted it out. You put it out there, and I've been spying your Twitter because you're a maniac these days. The Tour de France coverage from you is like real time is amazing. I don't know how you do it. Your you got a GIF machine. You've got
I got a gift machine. I
yeah,
got my giftsmanship. I'm crafting my giftsmanship all
I
the time.
I mean, like, whoa. So, if there's any listeners out there who are following the Tour de France right now, and you want to play along, at Cycling Reporter is the place to be, because
There you go.
that is quite a thing that you got going on there. Kudos
Maniacal.
and kudos to you,
Man,
man. Kudos to you. I mean, it's that's a lot. I mean, you're like up. You're like watching from the start.
yeah, I try to. I
Uh
mean,
huh.
maniacal is definitely the right word. You know what? For me, like people use social media for all different
Yeah.
reasons. For me, I don't hang out on Twitter very much. I'll check it several times during the day, but usually just for like a hot second.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for work actually.
Yeah.
I'll need it for like some fact checking. It's part of my job. But by and large, I'm basically on for live events, and that almost always means like bike racing.
Mm-hmm.
So I go on. So I use it as like it's kind of like conversational in the moment, the play by play, like you said. And beyond that, I don't really kind of go on too much. I think back in the day, I would be on there and spend a lot of time. And now I definitely spend a lot less time on it. But when I do, I'm definitely like really into it. And then, I use TweetDeck, and I don't know if you use that app, but TweetDeck has like all these settings. You can have columns, and you can have like custom curated columns, like who you're following and what
Mm-hmm.
tweets you see and all that stuff. So, no, yeah, it's my jam. I've been doing that kind of forever. And
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun. But yeah,
Yeah. It's an interesting. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting use of it. I mean, I know a lot of people that do that in other sports, like in a lot of the mainstream sports.
yep.
Your football and your baseball and stuff. But it's pretty cool to see. Cycling is it's the kind of sport that really calls for it. It's like baseball,
Yeah.
football. I mean, there's plenty of
Yeah.
people to hang out with in a room and watch a football game with. But cycling and at the level that you're talking about it, you almost need you need that audience. You need a pretty specific audience, and it's kind of cool to be able to
Yeah.
find it on Twitter because like that stuff that's next level cycling analysis that's going on there. That's not even for your kind of casual cycling fan.
Yeah. Like exactly. Yeah.
Which I've run across in the shop over the last couple of weeks, last few weeks. People that just watch it for they watch Phil Liggett. They like Phil
Yeah.
Liggett, and they like the NBC coverage, and that's what they watch, and that's cool. I mean, that's kind of
Yep.
that's why they call that a broadcast, right? It's for a broad audience. But what you got going on there is, it's if someone wants to tap into, someone wants to
It's
tap.
like if you want to do a bunch of cocaine and get into the Tour de France,
Yes.
come to my channel.
Yeah.
And we're gonna rock out.
That's a real time shit going on there, man. Holy cow.
Keeping it real.
Yeah.
No, I don't endorse cocaine use, for the record.
Mhm.
But no, but that's my thing. That's my jam. I've been doing that a long time.
Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
A lot of people do respond to it. I know it's not for everyone. I follow a lot of other cyclopaths, as we call ourselves,
Mhm.
and we're just all into that minute, real time, like live race call action.
Yeah.
And once the race is done, like the stage is done, I'm like, I'm out. Like I just drop. I just bolt. Like,
Sure.
I'm gone. Like
Mhm.
it's all good. And it's fun. We like it. And I do have a gift machine, and I keep it well oiled, and I pull it out of the garage every spring and get it humming, and it's fun.
Yeah,
and
I noticed that, and people retweet your gifts, which is
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
cool. Like there are people that it's like you put it out there, and then people are they appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
it's there's guys in Spanish that will retweet, and it's been kind
Yeah.
of fun watching how all that stuff gets spread around a little bit. So.
Yeah, and I wouldn't do it if people didn't kind of engage. Like
Mhm.
it would be nonsense. But you obviously you can see likes and replies and retweets, which is great. But it's all about kind of like bringing something hopefully a little bit meaningful to the conversation, and the bigger sense of conversation. Like a lot of bike racing can be really effing boring. Like the other stage we watched, was it stage 3 in Denmark? Like 99, I tweeted it was like 99% boring, 1% like stress fest, and it was just like insane because the last like 15K was just bananas. But
Mhm.
the 99% of it was like super boring and like anticlimactic. But like when you're on there with other people who are like commenting, they'll bring up some random facts. There's like dudes who just specialize in like stats,
Mhm.
and like cycling stats are like a world unto themselves. And just all this kind of stuff. So it's just kind of a fun. It's a bunch of nerds, and it's just having fun. And I know there's probably like I could probably name 3 or 4 people who are kind of like me. Shout out to Frida there. I can hear her in the background.
Yeah, I think there's somebody still blowing fireworks off in the neighborhood.
Oh,
so.
no.
Mhm.
But my point being, like, there are a handful of cyclopaths, thank you, like me who enjoy all that, and we kind of like have fun with it. But yeah, no,
the term is cyclopath.
that's right.
Is that right?
As opposed to psychopath, yes. Exactly. I think I saw that in a book somewhere, and I liked it.
Mhm.
No, it's just fun, and yeah, it's a good time. It helps pass the time, and what I was gonna say though, you have the basic like likes and retweets and all that, and I'm old, so I don't really get too caught up in that stuff. But what's interesting is sometimes you see some tweets go viral, and if you just like hit the right moment, and that's kind of fun because now you can see with Twitter, just like a basic Twitter account. I do have the blue check mark, which I got at some point, but I think they're pretty easy to get now. But once, I don't know if you have to have that or not, I can't remember, but you can click into your tweets and see all the kind of stats.
Mhm.
And it's kind of crazy. Like the one I did last, remember the Omi Opie?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that one. I think I just hit it in the right second, and it went viral. I think 50 Cent like retweeted me, just like random.
Did you say 50 Cent?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Really?
yes. I got a screenshot somewhere.
50 Cent.
And no, but it went bananas, and then it got embedded. It got embedded in a lot of news articles.
Uh-huh.
And whatever, it was fun. But you can click through the Twitter stuff, and it'll be like, oh, you had like 2 million like impressions and like X number, whatever. It just gives you all this stuff. It's just kind of fun to see what does well, what doesn't. And obviously I have some of that background. I did social media for Peloton magazine for a couple of years, and when I worked at bicycling and all that. So, I'm definitely like, with the journalism background, like I'm definitely interested and how a lot of that works. And the algorithm does change. So some stuff you think will do really well doesn't. And anyway, for me, it's just really fun at this point. I'm not doing it professionally.
No, and I think to me, actually, it's kind of quaint because I think that is kind of the perfect use for Twitter. Like it's been abused,
Yeah.
but I think it's become kind of, for a lot of people, toxic. They don't even go there anymore. But
yeah, it's a cesspool. It's been co-opted by like people who just want to flame everyone and shame everyone and cancel everyone and go on. The list goes on. It's like, I remember I joined in 2009 and I was like, Twitter was so fun. It was just like, it was kind of like for people who weren't, it was kind of a turning away from like Instagram. Not that it really existed then, but like, it
was a nerdy thing. I got on it just because I guess Lance Armstrong drew a lot of the cyclists into it, because it was something. It was cycling heavy for at least for like bike shops and I think cycling was one of the first sports that kind of gravitated towards it because I think. It drew a lot of people that didn't get any coverage in the mainstream, but for whatever reason, Twitter gave us an outlet and we were able to communicate and exchange information. So it really, it was, I found it really important at that time,
well,
it was a good place to get info.
You're 100% right. I think cycling in general, like, a lot of people who are into cycling are kind of nerdy. They're kind of cutting edge with like technology. They're kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of stuff. And by default, we're kind of interested in tech and all of that. But what was interesting about early Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, it was text only. There wasn't like videos. There weren't GIFs. There weren't images. You couldn't even upload photos, if I remember correctly. And that stuff trickled in later when they tried to make it more like, quote, social, which has been good and bad. But a lot of it was just text. And I love that as like a editor, writer, whatever person. Like, I just loved there were just text. So it'd be like just words.
And it was very limited, right? I mean, the amount of text was, like the characters were limited. Like you really had to be, like you'd have to get it out and you had to express yourself like in a very efficient manner. To get your point out. I mean, sometimes I remember like sitting there like for 10 minutes trying to figure out, how do you say this? How do you express all the things that you were saying? I mean, it was an interesting place at the, when it first started.
It was. Yeah. You're 100% right. It was kind of like, you got to pay for a telegram in the old days. And it's like, okay, how do I do this in like 6 words? No, you're absolutely right. And then they like doubled it at some point. I know there was a lot of pushback on that, and now it's like full blown. Like it's like a lot of social sites now. But I do think it is quaint. I think it's kind of a fun throwback. I have a lot of the same followers I had from 2009. I still follow them by and large, and it's fun and it's cool to see. A lot of the pros are on cycling on Twitter, and they'll engage with fans and stuff. And there's just it's a cool little subculture and. It's just fun. I don't really care like how many followers I have or how many spam accounts follow me or any of that stuff. Like I just go on. It's fun, and I don't. I gave up Facebook. I just got kind of tired of Facebook myself, and I still use Instagram, but I pretty much just use that for like 2 minutes of fun a day, maybe. I find like even that's like become kind of ruined a little bit with like marketing and sponsored posts and all that, but. It's okay to look at a little bit, but Twitter is kind of my jam, and I like how it's like you're getting at almost like it's still pretty concise, it's bite size, and it's like boom, boom, boom. So anyway, yeah, that's fun. But speaking of that, Joe, it's funny because it's nothing set up yet, but I may be doing some social media for Stelvio magazine. I don't know if you've heard of this. This new brand, it's called Stelvio, Stelvio, named after the famous climb, of course, in Italy. And it's a new cycling brand. They just came out with their first issue, and you can find them at online. Just search for Stelvio Mag. And the founding editor in chief is Jeremy Whittle, and I don't know if you know that name, but he's like the main Guardian. Cycling reporter, cycling journalist. So if you ever like see like Google News results and you see like Guardian stuff. They usually do really well in Google. Speaking of, but so Jeremy Whittle, he's like the main guy. So he does like the daily recap from the tour, and he'll do like some special coverage. And he's a great journalist. He's authored at least a couple of books that are really good reads. I recommend. One is called Von Tu. And so, yeah, like a really legit journalist there. Anyway, he started this magazine, and long story short, my buddy Brad over at Peloton was like, "Hey, Peloton is like all a separate story we could talk about sometime, and maybe we'll have Brad on." But basically, Peloton is going to be probably no more. It's going to be shuttered, unfortunately, and
Bummer.
so. Yeah, Brad with the whole Outside Magazine implosion. But anyway, he was like, yeah, this guy Jeremy's over at Stelvio, and they're kind of looking to really get their social boosted because they don't really have like a lot of followers yet. They kind of just started. And so I've been talking to Jeremy a little bit, even as of today. So I may end up doing a little social during the tour for them. I'll keep you posted. But if folks want to check it out, they'd probably love the follow and the engagement. And they're kind of like Peloton, basically. I'm not saying they're exactly the same or a copy, but they emphasize like heavy stock, a real magazine, right? Like a good heavy magazine, like from the old days.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful photography, a huge emphasis on photography, design, and then just great, great writing and great editing. And so if you like Peloton magazine, I think folks would be very interested in checking out Stelvio, and you can find him on all the social sites and all that. But anyway, so yeah, just a little snippet.
That a European-based magazine? Is he?
Yeah.
Is he based in Europe? Is that it?
Yeah, I believe he's in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he's an Englishman. I'd have to triple check that info, but yeah, I believe they're based in the UK or somewhere in Europe. But
very cool.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's fun, and I feel like with all the crazy stuff happening at outside outside online and Outside Magazine and all its properties, it's kind of cool that there is something kind of continuing because we can talk about it some other time, but like the whole cycling media world is like crazy. Like, there have been so many great magazines that have had to fold for various reasons. And, so Peloton was a really hard one, I think, because it did so well and it was thriving. And so it was very confusing why it was shuttered. But, it got bought by a relatively big corporation, and they did a lot of consolidation, and, they bought like Cycling Tips and Velo News and Peloton and all these
yeah,
sites.
they don't
Bike Reg, I believe they bought Bike Reg, like all these cycling properties, and now they're kind of just going to shutter some of them.
And events, right? I mean, they own a bunch of events. I mean, they just kind of came into the space and just threw down and bought everybody. They've been buying everything, and they decided they're going to, which says a lot. I mean, it says a lot about our sport, and that a corporation can come in and just buy like all the premier things. We're kind of ripe for that because we're not, we're not we're not necessarily a huge industry compared to others, and that's the
right.
We're still. It shows just how relatively small we are, here in the States. I mean, even though there's a lot of people riding bikes and stuff, but as an activity, it's very popular. But as a sport, it's still pretty small, and somebody who's got money can come in and buy all the premier events, all the magazines, all the you name it. They've bought everything, and so I don't know how that's never. I don't think that's ever a good thing, But
no, it's not.
But hopefully, the good thing about the cycling world is that there's always people that want to do it their way. There's always there's a lot of innovators in the sport. We're used to small time events, and we're used to drawing a finish line on the road and a ribbon and a card table and a tent and putting on an event. And people show up. That's all these events that they bought kind of started that way. It was just a guy and his wife doing a gravel race in the middle of nowhere and those things blow up, So hopefully we'll keep doing that kind of stuff,
Yeah, no, you actually spoke well to that point. You're
Mhm.
100% right, and it's a shame. Again, we'll save it for some other podcasts.
Yeah.
But a great shame. But the nice story a little bit here, I guess, silver lining is like Stelvio's new, and again, if people want to check it out, it's
Yeah,
kind of
that's
cool.
exciting.
It might be in the same universe as Roulaire. People
Hmm.
know Roulaire from
Hmm.
the UK, which is a very high quality premium cycling mag, like great storytelling, great writing, beautiful design, beautiful photography, heavy stock paper. Just like it's a magazine you want to keep and put on your shelf.
Yeah. Do you do
Uh,
you do you get it? Or you have a subscription to it?
I've had Roulaire subscriptions over the years. Currently,
Hmm.
mine is lapsed, but
Hmm.
I have had full year long subscriptions in the past.
Nice.
And I don't have it right now. I had, and part of the reason is I had Peloton, and I subscribed to Peloton almost it's in its entirety. And Brad would send me some really friendly like comp issues and stuff like that. And I worked for them, so I had just Pelotons all the time. And
Yeah.
so in a sense, I kind of didn't need Roulaire. They're not exactly the same, but they're kind of similar.
Hmm.
But yeah, so they're all great magazines. I love Roulaire, and there's I know. Well, what's cool with Roulaire is I'm kind of like getting back into Roulaire because they have a new editor in chief, Edward Pickering, and he's someone I really like, and he's a great writer. I just listened to him today on the new Roulaire podcast episode.
He's been around for a
Um,
long time. I mean, that
yep,
name is. Was he a
yep.
bicycling magazine guy or a Velo News
I don't.
guy?
I don't think bicycling, but he was at cycling, probably Cycling Weekly. You probably know him from the UK publications,
Mm-hmm.
including Pro Cycling. He was at Pro Cycling a long
Okay.
time,
Okay.
which is another great mag, but very race focused.
Mm-hmm.
And then so he was there a long time, and I know he's done like Cycling Weekly, if I'm not mistaken, and some of those. He's just a very eloquent guy. He's a great writer, and so yeah, actually, just speaking of today, I was listening to the latest Roulaire podcast, and he was on there with James Start, my buddy
Oh,
James Start, and
nice.
yeah, and they were talking with Ian Marshall or Ian, I forget the actual guy's name from Roulaire, but there's the three of them going over the tour stuff, but just a great publication. So I'm kind of almost like going back into Roulaire a little bit now since Peloton's kind of finishing up, and now we got Stelvio. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I may help them out a little bit with some social stuff because
Good.
they're kind of busy doing like reporting and writing and putting the magazine together. It can be very distracting and kind of jarring to like switch to social because social is kind of a different beast,
No,
and
it's a specialty into itself now. I mean,
it is.
I think social, to do it properly, and then
Yeah.
and to do it kind of at the level that you're doing it is real. I mean, you need. I mean, they call them community managers for a reason.
Yeah.
So I mean
Yeah.
that I know that there are. There are people that have community managers, and that's exactly what they do. They just pay attention to all their
Yep.
social media, all the different, because there's a lot to, I mean, if you're doing it at a very high level, there's a lot of stuff to keep track of these days. So,
Totally,
hmm.
totally. And things change all the time. Yeah, and you know what? To be fair, it's like there's a lot going on, and the worst version of it is, and I still see a ton of it today, and I just like kind of sigh because I feel like these brands are missing out so much. But the worst version is the lazy version where they tweet they put up a tweet, and the tweet just is a link to an article on their website, and that's fine, but I know for a fact that there's very little click through and engagement with that. And that's just kind of like a kind of the old school thinking with social media. Like I said, like, oh, we'll just tweet all our articles out. Like in a way, there's nothing wrong with it, but you have to do a lot more if you want to be like a really good brand. So you look at some brands like um, maybe like Cycling Tips. They do a pretty good job. Like they have like polls and they have like conversations, and they'll just post like, I don't know, like just like a semi controversial statement about something, even if it's for fun, or a photo, or they'll retweet some folks or start a thread, and they just kind of like get into the conversation. So I think they're doing it better than a lot of other brands. But point is, like, there are a lot of brands who just want to like post like a static article from their website, and there'll be hardcore folks who may click through and read it, but that's not really like taking advantage of social media, at least in my opinion. Like, you want to engage people, put up cool stuff, and it's not easy. It's hard, and it's hard to grow. But one of the things I really like about Stelvio, and it's kind of like what happened with Peloton, and I want to be careful. I'm not trying to say I grew Peloton, because I did not. But one of the things that was really cool about being with Peloton early on, and I wasn't there at the beginning, I came in later, but Facebook was still kind of becoming like really, really popular. It wasn't like super huge yet. And so kind of like, as long as you didn't like mess up, like, you were able to grow the followers like pretty substantially, pretty quickly. And as long as you just did some like smart, basic things. And I was able to do that. And then with Twitter and Instagram as well. So I'm not trying to take undue credit, but I think I just came in at a certain time where it's like, as long as you just were consistent and you had a little bit of voice, a little bit of color, and you weren't just dry and like pushing people like to go to your website, like, you were able to build up some good followers, especially if you had like cool galleries and people could just sit on the posts and look through like a bike gallery as opposed to going through your website. Just like little kind of things like that. And if you replied to people in comments and engaged with them, like, it was really fun. So I loved working with Peloton. It was a really exciting time, and just seeing their numbers grow like crazy. And getting back real quick to your bigger point, though, you were talking about like how, it's not a great sign for media when like someone could kind of come in and buy up all the main top sites, right? It's kind of like, geez, that's pretty freaking horrible. And it does actually happen in media in general sometimes, which is also crazy. But the thing is, I think when you have a sport like cycling, cycling is so weird because in a way it hasn't really changed a lot. It's still all about the tour. There's the tour for 3 weeks, and then there's kind of nothing else. If you want to take like an extreme view, and beyond that, it's kind of like for the cycling obsessed, the cycling fans. They'll watch the Giro, they'll watch the Vuelta, they'll watch some of the classics. But talking about some of those general interest viewers who might read or watch like Peacock or NBC, and they like Bob Key and Phil Liggett and Christian and Horner and stuff. And I like to watch some of that too. I usually watch different stuff because I want like more focus and less. I basically want less commercials.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I paid for I actually bought the Peacock app for the month, and they have an alternative feed that features Nicolas Roche.
Yep.
Which, it was interesting because I like Nicolas, right? I mean, he's like, we've known him since he was a baby. Yeah. I mean, he was Stephen Roach's son, So I mean, it was, he's like one of those. He's one of those children of a cyclist that when we got into the sport, we've kind of watched this kid grow up, and now he's a commentator. So I guess that means we're really old.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't he out with Ant McCrossan?
I've been trying to figure out who the second voice, who the main voice is, but I think that's him. I think
it's Ant McCrossan. He's pretty solid, and he does the more straight commentary, and then Nicholas is on there for like the color commentary, and he's a recently retired pro, obviously, so he's got like the insight, like the Robbie McEwen type insight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found a nice little hack this year, Joe. So I have I use ExpressVPN, and I also separately have a GCN subscription, which I pay for that. I have the Flow one, I pay for that. I have the Peacock one, I pay for that. So I have them all, and I'm happy to pay for coverage. I don't like using illegal feeds. I haven't done that in a long time now, but back in the day, you kind of had to if you wanted to watch like cyclocross and some of the lesser races. But my point being is, so I have the VPN, But what's interesting is I'm able to watch the GCN coverage, which normally I wouldn't be able to watch the tour coverage on GCN because they don't have rights in North America. It's all Peacock and NBC. But what I found is a nice hack, and I kind of found out about it accidentally. So I log in through like some European country. Like I just happened to choose Czech Republic because I live there. So I just clicked on that. So I watched GCN via the Express VPN. And what it does is it allows me to watch GCN's tour coverage, which has Robbie McEwen, Daniel Lloyd, Robbie McEwen, Daniel Lloyd. It has Brad Wiggins, Orla Shinoui, and it has a handful of other people who are, Sean Kelly, of course, Carlton Kirby. You know, I'm not big fans of some of those folks, but I love Robbie McEwen. I love Sean Kelly. I like Daniel Lloyd, and I like Brad Wiggins. Brad Wiggins is on the moto. He's so funny.
And that's the GCN
that's my
coverage?
little hack.
Wow.
Yeah. So normally, like for example, GCN had the Giro in the U.S. So I was watching, their Giro coverage, and you can get that with just by logging in, no VPN needed. And so I pay for the annual subscription, and but they don't have the U.S. rights. So when you click on it, normally it'll just say sorry, not available in your country.
Yeah, it's geo-blocked.
But with that VPN, which I think is like $12 a month, so I'm able to sneak in and watch it via the Czech Republic, and
nice.
So it's great. The feed's perfect, and the commentary is great. My main thing is I know nobody likes commercials, but I just can't do commercials with bike racing.
Yeah.
And I don't like all those little vignettes and those little color stories and it's like 20K from the finish, and they're like, let's have a 3-minute video on this rider's home life, like how he goes shopping to his local farmer's market, and I'm like, oh my god, no. So anyway, that's my little hack, but bigger picture, it's still just the tour, right? Like outside the tour, people aren't really interested. It becomes like a very, very tiny sport after that, which I like because it's I like that, I like having it kind of to ourselves, but at the same time, I realize outside the tour, no one's kind of really paying attention, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I mean, and even the tour, it's kind of a, I have the opportunity through the shop, and because people know that I own a bicycle shop, I get in if there's ever cycling involved or someone's even lightly interested in cycling, it's always the Tour de France, and so I get into these conversations a lot, about the Tour de France, but that's the only thing, in even that, it's a very, the average fan that I run into has a real basic understanding, I mean, it's really just what they're hearing on the tour broadcast. I don't know that they even go to like a cycling tips or, I don't think that they research at all. I mean, really their knowledge comes from watching the Tour de France on NBC, during July. And that's kind of their cycling information. That's all they know. And so, I mean, I guess that's why I'll that coverage that they do, I have to kind of understand who they're talking to, right, and who their audience is. Right. They're speaking to a very novice cycling fan, and so you do have to dumb it down quite a bit, because I find myself dumbing it down a lot when I'm talking to them. I have to talk in very basic terms, and even you're going back to explaining echelons again, and why they're doing certain things, and although I every once in a while I'm surprised. People do retain the knowledge. They've been watching it over and over, and they've come to understand the sport a little bit, and every once in a while someone they know a little bit of the backstory because they've been watching it maybe since the Lance years. I think he brought, for whatever it's worth, he brought a lot of people into the sport at that time, and some people,
for sure.
Some people stuck with it. And so now they have, they've been watching it for 15 or 20 years, and so that's, And Phil is their guy, kind of like it was when we were kids. When we were young, he's the voice of
Well,
cycling for them. So.
yeah, and to be fair and keep it real, like,
Hmm.
hey, we all got into it somehow. We all got into
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
I remember watching Phil and Paul Sherwin, rest in
yeah,
peace,
yeah.
and I remember like what was that dude, John something from like CBS doing like the
Oh, John
uh
Tesh. Yeah,
yeah, John
John
says like
Tesh. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
going back now,
Oh
and
man, yeah, those
you
guys.
know
John Dockery, John
yeah.
Tesh. Oh yeah, I mean those guys
And
were.
a bunch of guys I'm forgetting, but
Yeah.
we all got into it somewhere, so I
Hmm.
have no gripes at all. But you know what? One thing that's really funny about the Peacock slash NBC coverage is, so I'm happy to just like skip the regular U.S. coverage. I like that you can skip into that other version and just hear the straight race without commercials. You
Hmm.
get Ant McCrossan, Nicholas Roach, like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, but what's interesting is when they have the post mortem, and they have Christian and they have Horner,
Hmm.
and I really like that. See, there are a few things that I gotta have, and like I gotta have that because I love when Horner. Chris does a pretty good job. I think Horner is like surgical, like he's laser focused. He knows tactics and strategy, I
Hmm.
think, better than maybe anybody in the business. I'm talking pros, current, past, and commentators. I don't care who you're talking about. Horner does like he has such an amazing clarity and read on races, and I'm sure you're aware that he has his own YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
Hmm.
he does some really good viewership and traffic on that too. He's so good with tactics and strategy, and so I love tuning into that. So I kind of manage a couple different things I'm doing when I'm watching the tour, and especially after. So it's a mixed bag, but everything is so like piecemeal. Like you got to kind of bounce around a little
Yeah.
bit,
Hmm.
and it's very niche and it's very inside baseball. So your point's well taken, and it is interesting. It's cool when people come into the sport and they start to understand what like drafting is and breakaways and time gaps and like the 3 kilometer rule and just like all these things. It's like because otherwise you can get so lost in it. Like people are just like they don't understand what you're saying half the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, yeah. There's a lot to it that we take for granted, and it's not till I get into a conversation with some of these people that I realize how much just minutia is in my just like
Right.
stuff, just random stuff in my
Yeah.
head. I could talk I could talk to someone for hours about cycling.
It's like talking about getting in the weeds on like curling or something. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
people are like, "Where are you from?"
Yeah, I mean, it's it's even occurred to me where I watch people's eyes glaze over because I'll start getting really deep. Like Nicholas Roach, son of Stephen Roach, winner of the 1987 Tour de France. Like people
Oh
are like
God.
they don't even know who Stephen Roach is. And yeah, it's this month I'm always reminded how much I this goofy sport and how much I
Yep.
like it and.
Yeah. Yeah.
The origins. It makes me think back to how I got into it and how it's really sucked me in. These stories and the writers and how romanticized, how
Oh
romantic it
yeah.
seemed to me. At that
Yeah.
time it was so foreign. It was so weird, and I mean it was crazy enough to it was so appealing to me that after watching my first Tour de France within 2 years I was in Europe. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like got on an airplane and went to the hometown of the guy who won the Tour de France because I wanted to race bicycles. Like that's how much that's how much it drew me in because it was so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just the way they sold it and the way it came across was so
Mm-hmm.
so appealing, and
Very cool.
so we're still here, and like after all these years, we're still here with it, which is great, and all the
Yeah.
friends and yeah, so all that, it's a nostalgic month in a lot of different ways because of all these. It just makes me remember every year, like all the friends, all the people, all the rides, all that stuff. It's hard not to it's
Yep.
hard not to get into it. Let yourself go a little bit. When
Yep.
once the tour starts. There's something pretty magical about it, and and I'm going to try and enjoy it a little bit more this year. I'm going to try to make a little bit more time to really like, you know, watch it a little bit, like enjoy it. Usually July
Yeah,
around the bike shop doesn't allow for time to
yeah.
do a lot of that, but I'm going to make time to like watch it and like get into it a little bit, and pay attention, not just not just
It,
not just
yeah,
have it on in the background.
yeah. I mean, it's cool. I think that's great. I totally like understand. Like, you got a business to run and a lot of responsibility, and that's a big task.
Well, and the problem is that it's bikes, Danny, and so like when bikes are also your business, then it's like it does become a little hard to like more bikes, and when you get home at night, it's like, oh, more bikes, more, and be careful, because when you turn your passion into your
Yeah,
business, I mean,
yeah,
you do have to be careful, and there are times where it's bitten me, it's like it's not always like, sometimes you just want to get away from bikes, and July
yeah,
typically is just a really busy, you try to make time for it, but it's a busy month. And so, this is a year where you're just, especially the last couple of years, the last couple of years have just been insane around the
yeah.
shop. And
Hmm.
but so this is like one of those years where you're just like, okay, man, do it to me. I need, I need, like I need,
Yeah,
I kind of need it, and it looks like from the crowds and from just the spectators, the amount of spectators on the course, like, people are hungry for this race this year. People
yeah.
people really need it. They just want to get out, they want to see it, and I think they just kind of realize how much they missed it and how important it is when the tour comes to town, or when it goes through your village
Hmm.
and all of that. I think there's an appreciation for it. So
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I was just gonna say, like, you're onto something good there. I was just gonna say, like, I love that the tour is always there. It's like,
mm-hmm,
there may be years where I haven't been into cycling that much,
mm-hmm,
like, at all. But like, I usually still kept up with the tour. Like,
yep,
I could come in 3 weeks, watch some stages, I'm out. Like, it's like Christmas. Like, the tour is always kind of there,
mm-hmm,
and it's just like this kind of great thing in life, in my life, where it's like, I love a lot of other races. I watch a ton of other races, but the tour is still the tour. And so that's really cool.
yeah,
But yeah.
it just, all the eyes are on the tour, right? The world's eyes are
Hmm.
on the tour. It's still, I mean, it's still, and I guess you were talking about that before, where it's all about the tour, but it really is kind of a magical race, right? I mean, it still
Yeah.
holds that power over people, and it's the course, right? It's also the country. It's also like where they're riding. It's, France is like so, um, it's just beautiful to watch. Even with the
Yep.
volume down, and just to watch that, watch 3 or 4 hours of that. I mean, it's like, whoa, it's just kind of pretty. It's picturesque, and um,
Yeah.
it's just kind of visually stunning.
Yeah, there've been some surveys, and I know I've written about this a little bit too. Something like 60 to 70% of the French viewing public who watch the tour say they watch it for the landscape.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're not watching for the racing.
Mm-hmm.
They may know some of the riders, some of the teams, some of the sponsors, what have you, but they're pretty much watching for the landscape. And I mean, there's no race that gets this coverage. They got what, like 5 helicopters in the air at any time. The president drops in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They've got like rock stars. They've got Tom Cruise. They got all these people popping in, what have you. No, but it's absolutely gorgeous. Obviously, the mountains. Once they get to the mountains, it's just epic and totally amazing and gorgeous. Um, so no, yeah, it's something special, and I'm enjoying it. This year, obviously, they started in Denmark, and they had stages there. That was really cool. It added like this totally different element to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been to Denmark, but it looks like a great place. Fans came out in droves. I mean, it was like 5, 10 deep in a lot of places, like the whole entire stage. Like, it wasn't like there was like tons of fans around like the towns and the villages. Like they were out in the country,
Yeah.
and it was still like 3 or 5 deep. It was absolutely amazing. I know James Start was talking about that today on the Ruler podcast, for example, and I've been watching a lot of it, and yeah, it's just I really couldn't believe it. Even for the tour, I was like, this like all of Denmark just like took the weekend off and was like, we're gonna go support our Danish riders.
Yeah, the circus is in town.
That's right.
I think it happens whenever the tour. I mean, the tour draws a huge crowd anyway, but when the tour visits your country, when the tour is outside of France, because the same thing happened in England, right? When they were in England, it was it was nuts. I mean, whenever they visit a foreign country, then it ups the ante. Thanks for listening to the Bike Shop Society podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email us at mail@bikeshopsociety.com. If you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you can look us up at Bike Shop Society. That's it. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Now, back to the show. Goodbye.
So switching gears, though, I was just talking earlier, so I got fed up with my tubeless system. And I just decided I didn't have the patience for it. I really tried, Joe.
Was it the fact that the pressure's down when you go to ride a bike, or like when you get on, like, like every time you go out to ride your bike, your tires were really low, or what?
No.
What was it? What was it with the tubeless that you didn't like?
To put it concisely, I guess. So then I had a number of punctures, and a lot of them, in fact, all of them except one self-sealed. So the sealant did its job, but I did find there were some very tiny ones, and they would seal, and you don't even notice them. You get home, and then you might see a little bit of that sealant kind of action going on. You're like, oh, okay,
yeah, a little wet spot there.
Yeah, just a tiny bit. But then I had a couple others that were a little bit bigger, and I noticed one of them actually. I think it happened twice. So it sealed, and but as it was sealing, I didn't even notice it. But the back of my frame got all covered in sealant, which then I realized was a sign. Well, you got to plug that, and so I bought the plug kit, and I was able to plug 2 of the holes without issue. And, I kept, I topped up the sealant a couple times, and, I'm about 1,000 miles onto these wheels. So I topped up the sealant a little bit, and things were going okay. And then I got, but nonetheless, like a lot of that is still like, some maintenance and a little bit messy and whatever. But there's kind of a journey you go on, getting new to tubeless. And I never really did mountain biking, so tubeless is real new to me. But I was gonna say, I definitely had one hole that was pretty big. So I don't know what I hit, but I hit something pretty significant. It was a decent sized hole, and basically I just had this situation where I was trying to plug it, and the plug really didn't work. And I know you have a couple hacks for that, like you can put a piece of old tire like on the inside to kind of cover it, and maybe that's more just to get you home. But I tried the different plugs, and they were going in okay, and they looked good. But then I'd pump up the tire, and I'd let this thing sit, and then it would like pop out. And I had that a couple of times, and you know what? I got kind of fed up with it, and the tires aren't cheap. The ones I had, granted, they came with the bike. They're $70 a pop. No pun intended. And, just like buying the sealant and then the whole plug thing. And it just felt kind of like high maintenance, I guess.
Yeah, they are. It is. And, tubeless is one of those things where, around the shop, I never suggest it to anybody. Like, it's one of those things where if you come in and you're asking for it, then, or you should know what you're getting yourself into. Like, I never push it on anyone. And,
right.
I actually, I probably, and I do plenty of tubeless conversions, but I always ask, I always like check with people. I'm like, why are you doing this? Are you aware of what you're getting, are you aware of what you're getting yourself into, because a lot of people are pushed into it. There are tubeless, there are just people out there that, they just preach tubeless, to anybody and everybody. but it's not something that
Crusaders.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're just kind of like that. You've got to do it. You've got to do it. And a lot of people get into it and they don't realize it's a pain in the butt and you got to maintain it. I always, the way I always pose it to people is like, are you the kind of person that likes to work on your bike a lot? Like, or do you just like to get on and ride it?
Yeah.
And most people are like, I just want to get on the bike and ride. I'm like, well, then tubeless isn't, for you. You got to maintain this stuff and your tires might go low. You got to put sealant in it every once in a while, and, it's great when it works, but when it doesn't work, it's a mess. And,
yeah, you gotta take out take out the valve.
Oh,
you
yeah.
gotta, do different types of, maybe get the whatchamacallit, the kit, and the whole syringe. And,
Oh yeah, and if the tape goes bad, I mean, there's just and the sealant gets into the spoke holes. I mean, it's just a mess. I've done
a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of different tubeless setups. And different problems, and you, just like you said, you get a big enough cut, then the sealant doesn't work. You get a little slice in there, and in the city, where you're riding.
Yeah.
Like tubeless is great out, maybe in the woods where you get a thorn or something like that, maybe doing some regular gravel riding. But the city, it's a lot of glass. So that the tubeless isn't really going to help you in a situation like that. Those are slices. And so, it's never,
Yeah.
I mean, I like I said, I know people who love tubeless and they, they'll preach it to everybody, but it's not. I don't think that. I don't think that that road tubeless is necessarily refined yet.
Well, you really spoke to it well, because if you remember, and I think I mentioned in a previous pod, but when I picked up my bike, I didn't even think about it, number one, but number two, I was fully expecting just clinchers with inner tubes. While I was in there picking up the bike, there was like some downtime for the crew, and so we got to talking, and I was like, looking at the bike and this and that, and next thing you know, like, oh yeah, it's set up for tubeless. We got the sealant in there, you're ready to go. And I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't ask for tubeless, and I knew there were tubeless ready, and a lot of bikes come like that now, which is a nice option for sure. To have like tubeless ready if you want it, and also just the clincher, the inner tubes. But I was like, you know what, and I'm like, I'm gonna give this a go. Like I've heard a lot about it. That's all you freaking see on the cycling sites is like tubeless. Yeah. And I know it's trickling into the pro ranks and for road and all this. But your point is right. The main points for me are like, it's very high maintenance. I feel the gains are so marginal for road, especially for someone like me. I'm not competing. I'm not at a high level right now anymore. Like I'm just going out and doing some rides. Like I want to go out and ride. Like if tubeless were a lot less high maintenance, I'd probably stick with it. But the fact that I did have a handful of flats, and again, I kept thinking of the last several years I've ridden clinchers like you forever. And the last few years, especially, like I could count how many flats I had on one hand easy. Like I would go a whole season. I would have maybe 1, 2, 3 flats, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that was like doing some decent mileage. So anyway, I went with it, and then I've ridden it for the first like few hundred miles. It was pretty sweet. I did notice some of the pressure going out, so I put in some more sealant, whatever. Anyway, it got to be too high maintenance. I feel for road, especially for what I'm doing, maybe just road in general, it doesn't make a ton of sense. It's just not there. And I also, like you, and I was kind of tweeting about this, I was actually surprised how many people like kind of engaged with that tweet. I kind of just did it as like a brain fart. Like I was just like making a comment. But I couldn't believe how many people engaged with that and commented. It felt like people were just like, yeah, like, me too. I'm sick of tubeless. And I was like, wow, like there's some visceral reaction. And, like you said, I know there are people who want to convert people, and people are proselytizing and they're so into it. And they just, it's like a whole thing. But for road, for what I'm doing, like, I think I'm going to be just super happy. Sure, I'll get some flats here and there, but I got the inner tubes. I can fix a flat in 5 minutes. I'll be on my way, and I've got decent tires. I always try to keep my tires in really good shape. If they start to wear a bit, I'll probably replace them.
What kind of tire? What kind of
So
tires do you have on there right now?
so the ones I had, or the ones I now have with the inner
The
tubes.
ones that you have with tubes right now. So you
So
did you change you changed tires from the
yeah,
tubeless? Okay,
yeah,
the
I
stock
did
ones. Mm-hmm.
because the ones that came with it, they're very decent tires. So like
Mm-hmm.
$70 a pop. They were Bontrager. Um, and the new ones I have are Bontrager too. So the new ones that I just put on, I had them in a closet and they were unused. They were still brand new, and I just never used them. They're like the Bontrager R3s, I think.
Okay.
They're kind of like a slick, like just like a straight road tire, like probably higher range. They're not like the top, but they're pretty higher range road tire. They're 28s, and they're just like a nice all black tire. I've actually ridden the same tire before, and they served me really well. And so that's what I got. And then the ones I had before were like 32s, and those were like a all around tire, whatever you want to call them. They had kind of like a file tread almost, like some traction on the side, but yeah, like yeah, bottom line, too much maintenance. I don't like to work on my bike that much. I'd rather be out riding my bike. And as long as I don't get flats and they move along relatively quickly, obviously you don't want to really slow kind of setup. But at the same time, I don't need a fast setup. So I just want to go out and ride and enjoy and have some decent performance. So I'm pretty stoked. And that's just my little news.
No, that's well, it's big news, but you gave it a shot, and I think a lot of people are probably that's probably why you got so much of a response because there are so many people kind of trying it for the first time because of all the all the buzz that it's been getting and the bike companies kind of pushing it and but I find it to be kind of a for road specifically a real pain in the butt.
Yeah, beyond that, like even for cyclocross, like I've got tubulars. I got some nice zip wheels that I just have dedicated for cross, so I have my tubulars glued on there. So I'll be fine for that. And then for road, I'm just gonna stick with my clinchers.
Mm-hmm. Good for you, man. Good for you. Yeah, I'm still a clincher tube guy, so.
Just like it was like you said, it was fun to get on it and like
Mhm.
see what it was all
Yep.
about. And
Yeah.
I did like the riding of it. I did like the lower pressure, but going from 38s to I'm sorry, from 32s to 38s,
Mhm.
sorry, from 32s to 28s, it's definitely it feels like really skinny again.
Mhm.
But the reality is I've just been doing pretty much all road anyway.
Mhm.
And so I'm just trying to look at it very realistically. And 28s are still like, decent,
It,
decent
it's so fun.
grip.
It's so funny that like a 28C tire, like
Yes.
you're like, oh, that's it's pretty skinny. Like that
Yes.
is on the road. You're that's still like that is now like a skinny tire because when we came in, it was, I mean, 23s were it. And I remember running into guys in Europe that were running 18s and 20s when I first got over there. I
Oh,
mean, they were running 18s. I remember they made fun of my 23s. I mean, made fun of my 23s. Like, what are you riding? Are those garden hoses on your bike? It's like, that's like, like I remember getting a lot of heat for riding 23s, and now 28 is considered kind of a thinner tire. So,
yeah.
and I mean, I've looked at a little bit of the tech that they're using at the tour, and people are they're running 28s. Pretty common. I mean, it's actually commonplace to run 26 anywhere from a 26 to a 28. So they're up there and running the lower pressures and all of that stuff. So it's kind of that's where we're headed, and I'm all for it because it's so much more comfortable. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I really like it. It is funny going from 32 to 28. It's like I was literally on the bike and just rode for 5 miles around the neighborhood to like make sure they're, feeling pretty good and all that. And yeah, it just visually looks so skinny suddenly. But then I'm like, wait a minute, I was riding 23s for decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I swear I remember having a pair of Continentals that were 22s.
Yeah.
And I was probably 140, 130 psi on those. Like, oh my god, like that's like track stuff or something.
Did you ever run tubulars? Did you ever have a set of tubulars?
Um, I I did have a set. I did have a set of tubulars, and I think they got stolen or someone accidentally threw them out. They weren't like a high-end pair, but I did have a set of tubulars for a while. Oh, you know what? I did have. I'm sorry. I totally had tubulars on two different occasions. The first time I was talking about a minute ago was when I was a lot younger, but then I had a pair of Eastons, like 60 millimeter carbon wheels, like Eastons that I got from. I got it. I paid for them, but I got like a pro deal, whatever. And those were tubulars. So I had tubulars, and that was in Central Park. I'm sorry, in when I was living in Brooklyn. So I remember racing all those like in Prospect Park, Central Park. So those were just race wheels, and I only used them for racing.
Yeah.
And they were like real like deep section carbon wheels, and like we said, tubulars. So you put those on, you're like automatically a mile or two an hour faster, and maybe 3, I don't know. And you definitely wouldn't want to have them on windy days. But they were like super fast and very subtle. You felt glued to the road, no pun intended. But they were super nice.
I miss the feel of race wheels, to be honest. I do. That feeling of putting the fast wheels on there. If you were doing it right, if you really did have a good set of race wheels, man, it made you feel kind of special. You notice the difference. I mean, it was a very noticeable difference. And
I mean, when I put those on, not to sound cheesy because I was just a Cat 3, but like, I mean, you put them on the night before your race. So in the morning, I would just hop on the bike and go. Some guys would have a little setup where they would have them on their backpack, and they would like bungee them and then ride them to the race in case they didn't want to flat. And I usually just rode them on the bike, but I remember, you'd get on the bike and it just felt like, okay, something's different. Like this feels faster, and you felt like you were ready for battle. Like your bike probably was at least 1 or 2 miles an hour faster just by putting those on. Way lighter and way more aero. So no, it was fun. It was cool. But I think these days, tubulars for cross are great for me. And I'll be happy. I'll be happy with those. So,
yeah. Well, you just mentioned cross again, so I mean, wouldn't be surprised to see you out there running around at the park this fall.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I continue, besides being sick for a week there. But I don't want to see you hopping barriers this winter. Danny. I don't think it would be very pretty, Joe. Well, I was going to say though, seriously, is like, it's one thing, and you know this, but it's one thing. You don't have to be in really great shape to join a road race. And especially if it's like a park race, like a little circuit, you don't have to be in actually great shape. I've talked to some people about this, and they're always very surprised to hear it. But, you can kind of have a gut. You can not be like even close to your race weight. If you can just like handle your bike and you know how to like close gaps and like keep your position, you can sit in that draft all day and cruise along at 27 miles an hour. Like it's not that hard. And I know a lot of guys who did that, in all the racing I've done. Like there were guys there who I would drop on any group ride any day, but in that field, like they're like behind the box truck, right? So it's not that hard. And again, no real climbs to speak of. So they'd be there at the end of the race, like, pack fodder, but still like they were there. And if they, obviously breaking away, closing gaps, big gaps, like that's a different matter altogether.
Sure.
But my point being, for cyclocross, there's no hiding. Like you can't fake fitness.
No.
When you come out to cyclocross, you're either fit or you're not. Like there's running. It's like a time trial. So you're at your threshold the whole race. You're near the red, going into the red. So there's no.
No. Yeah, there's no. Yeah, so, there's nowhere to fake it there. Like mountain biking.
Yeah. So I doubt I'll be doing any of that this year.
That's good to hear, Danny. I feel better.
Well, hey, you keep bringing it up and
we're
tempting me.
We're just getting this thing underway. Last thing I need is for you to go out there and blow yourself up. So.
Oh my, yeah, like literally, like
Yeah.
hit the barriers. But
yeah.
no, just continuing now. Well, restarting after being sick a little bit, but getting in some rides. And Joe, we gotta do a ride, man.
Yeah, you should come. Maybe this weekend or something. I like I said,
Possible.
take it. Take an easy ride down the path. I'm reminded how we're very lucky to have that right across the street from the shop. It's an easy way to go knock out an after work ride, or like I did today. And
so did you ride south toward like Starved Rock, like that direction?
Yep. You go through Lamont, home of Christian Vandeveld, and you go out to it. There's the pavement ends at about 13 miles from the shop. It's a little town called Romeoville.
Okay.
And then you turn around, and if you do that out and back, you're about 40K. About 26 miles or so. 40.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice. That's and that's on the paved trail. But if you wanted to continue south of there, the next stop would be Lockport, and then all the way out to Joliet on a bike path. And then when you get to Joliet, you'd have to make it from from the north end of Joliet to the south end of Joliet, where the path picks up. That's
gotcha.
the I&M trail. So that portion from Romeoville to Joliet is limestone. It's crushed limestone. But
gotcha.
it's tame. I mean, I ride it on a 25C road tire all the time. The only time it'd be trouble would be with like after a heavy rain or something. But for the most part, it's pretty manageable on a road bike. It's great. It's great. That's kind of our pretty regular ride for us. So
nice. Mm-hmm. And is it any little drags, or is it mostly pancake flat?
No, it's pretty flat. No, it's pretty flat. You cross a bridge here or there, but it's nothing. It's nothing. It's flat. And so that's the one thing that route is missing, because it parallels a river, and and so it doesn't. There's not a lot of change there in the terrain.
Right.
But there are a few places where you can, kind of head off the path and hit some hills. Lamont is one of them. There's the whole town of Lamont, as you know, is kind of famous place to go and do intervals, and a couple of good hills through there. Actually, they were one of those hills they were pitching to be kind of a featured element in the Olympic road race had we scored the Olympics here in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, actually, Christian Vandevelde's dad for a long time had this idea of doing a time trial in Lamont, like through the town of Lamont. He had it all mapped out, and I remember talking to him. About it, and he was really set on it. Like, he was trying to sell this to people, and I remember he threw out names like Gianni Bugno, and I was like, really, Gianni Bugno in Lamont doing a time trial? That would be awesome. Because remember, I think he was like time trial world champion or something, at that time, in the 90s, and I remember distinctly him like calling out Gianni. He's like, could you imagine Gianni Bugno riding up my car? I was like,
right.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'd be all over that. So yeah,
oh my God.
yeah. He wanted it to be some sort of like end of season time trial, and it was going to race through Lamont, and I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing.
Kind of like the Grand Prix of Nations. That was the famous the season end, like really long time trial.
Oh yeah.
And I remember that was always like a feather in your cap if you could win that. That was kind of like you have the sprinters, favorites like Champs-Élysées and different things like that. And that was like the TT special. It's like big a season goal at the end and the Grand Prix of Nations, and it was just like this one long ass time trial.
Yeah.
You know,
We should
Fignon and Charlie Mate and Indurain and all these guys would just go there and
we should bring that one back. There was also one where there was two riders.
They're the two up and the four up as well, maybe, or that's just Olympics, maybe.
Yeah, I remember there was there was like a famous 2-man time trial as well. That was, kind of like that Grand Prix des Nations. But that race was, when did they cancel that race? Or,
I don't know. I would guess in the 80s or early 90s.
2004 was the final edition.
They had it up until then?
All the way till 2004, yeah.
Wow, I would have guessed it died before that, but probably sponsorship or something. But also, I mean, for TV viewing, that probably wouldn't be super compelling. But you can imagine the challenges with that. But I remember just always seeing it as like this really cool race. There used to be, like you were getting at, I think it's fair to say there used to be like a lot of like TTs and different kinds of TTs, and like we don't really have any of that anymore.
We don't even have like a proper TT in a stage race anymore. They're relatively short.
Pretty short. Yeah, they're pretty short. I think this year is like 40K maybe.
Yeah,
but that's not that long. I mean, back in the day, I know the Giro had a crazy long one like a handful of years back. I want to say Sicily, but I could be wrong. But somewhere in Italy, and it was like this insane. It was like 60K or 80K or whatever it was. But it was like, and I was like, wait a minute, these used to be pretty common. And so people were like, modern audiences were freaking out. They're like, what? The guy's going to be riding for like an hour and 20 minutes. And I'm like, they did this all the time.
All the time. Sometimes they throw a mountain in there. It's like,
right.
They have some real proper time trials. I miss that. I miss those time trials. They were real game changers. Like the riders had to really, I mean, not that they don't prepare for it now, because they do, but I mean that was something that could really change the race quite a bit. Really shake things up.
And talking about cross, like you can't hide your fitness like in a time trial. I mean, it's you against the clock. I mean, you're going hard and fast, or you're not. And like there's no hiding in there. So I don't know. It'd be cool if they brought some of those back. I know in the Olympics, in the World Championships, they have the team time trial. But
when we do that edition, they let us take part in the planning of the Tour de France, and we'll do national teams again. We'll do national teams, steel bikes, really long time trials, 400-kilometer stages, 350-kilometer stages, no radios.
Everyone has to have a mullet.
Yeah. No helmets required either. So
mullets or ponytails,
hairnets. That would be fun. I think that the national team thing is interesting. I don't know how that would ever be pulled off, but boy, if they wanted to do something kind of interesting, that would really, I think that would be a really interesting one. Like
that would be, because it would be like kind of a throwback to I'm just thinking of races like Coors Classic and American Flyers, like this national kind of spirit, like rivalry. I mean, you can imagine a lot of really good squads. I mean, you got Belgium, you got the Netherlands, you got Italy, even France and some other nations. The U.S. could be really good depending on the era. I think it could be a lot of fun, but good luck.
Yeah, I know. Just I mean, with the trade teams and all that, I would make it nearly impossible. But boy, I would talk about shaking things up a little bit. That would make it really interesting to see national teams again and compete in the Tour de France.
Yeah, I mean, TTs are just such a weird thing, but I love that it's like James Stewart was talking. He made a really good point today in the Rouleur podcast that I keep mentioning, but he was talking about like the cobble stage tomorrow, and he just loves it. Like, I know some people are like, "Oh, cobbles don't belong." Like Bernard, is always like, "It's a circus; they don't belong in stage races." But he makes a really good point. He's like, he's been in the sport forever. I think this is his 33rd tour. And he's just like, it's so boring when the races are won in the time trial and in the high mountains. Like you're looking at a handful of moments really, and it's like this is really, there's a lot more to bike racing, and I'm not even 100% full on with like the cobblestones necessarily, but I definitely lean toward having them and wanting them. But it's like it really pushes like all the different riders in different directions, like very challenging for everyone, and it's a whole different ball game. And heaven forfend if there's any rain or something. I mean, it's gonna be a disaster.
Well,
but
like the team, and like the team tactics are different. Like some teams are really set up for it. Like Jumbo, they've got a great. They're set up perfectly. The Koenig, I guess, has got a great team for tomorrow. But like Emirates right now, they don't have a team for the class. Pogacar's been out there by himself most of this race. He's been racing. He hasn't had a lot of teammates around him all race. And so
the main guy they were going to bring too, he got COVID. Trentin, he was supposed to come, and he's great on the cobbles. But you're right, and James also mentioned, like, if unlike the regular Roubaix race where you'll have like maybe 20, 30, 40 helpers with wheels spread out through the course, like he's like, tomorrow, no, they don't have that. He's like, if you get a puncture, you could be so SOL, and you may never see the front of the race. Your entire tour can be over if you get a puncture, depending on where and when it happens. If you don't have a teammate to give you a wheel, or if there's not the car near you. I mean, cars get jammed and they crash on the side of roads. I'm not saying all that's going to happen tomorrow, but it's definitely like the probability goes up for stuff like this to happen.
I did see something in the Spanish, one of the Spanish reporters was talking about it, but how they, some of the teams are calling up all of their reserve staff for tomorrow. They're calling everybody that all hands on deck. So if
hey man, come back from your beach vacation.
Yeah. Like all their mechanics, because you've got these teams are so big now that they have teams. They have a specific group of people at the Tour de France, and there's a bunch of guys at home, and there's people back at the office, and there are guys that aren't necessarily at the Tour de France, but they've flown all these guys in just for tomorrow to be on the road, and like it's all hands on deck. Everybody is going to be there. So I'm guessing some of the other teams, I'm guessing most of the teams are doing that as well. But I did see that specifically in the Spanish in some of the Spanish news where the Spanish teams had called everybody from Pamplona, from the headquarters and stuff. And actually Pamplona is about to start. Like the running of the bulls starts. And they had talked to one of the guys who was like, he was ready to he was ready for his town's party, and they're like, no, man, we need you up in France for a few days, I also saw that the first stage of the first ever Tour de France was actually the course for Paris-Roubaix.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was all. It was in that same brief that they were talking about that. So
I mean, a lot of those roads. If you look at the big picture books, I've got a couple of them, and they have the real original photos from the.
They were all gravel. They were all gravel roads. I was going to
say those roads. I mean, they were just dirt. They were just dirt farm roads with huge trenches and talk about potholes. Like, we don't even know what potholes are. Dude, and these guys, they'd have to weld their own bikes.
Oh, man.
You weren't allowed to get help, with your bike. You had to, borrow the blacksmith's, anvil and,
Eddie, I got this Spain in the early 90s, man. I mean, some of those roads that I rode through, that I rode on there is going through small towns were still pretty... before the EU came in, before all that stuff started becoming a little bit more standardized, and there was more money, for roads and construction, and those roads, some of those country roads were really rough. I mean, it was, I needed those 23s. I needed every bit of those 23s.
Imagine if you had 32s.
Oh, yeah, it would have been so much better.